Bonjour, I'm Emery Brusset, and I'm speaking now from home, from my desk where I can reflect about what I've seen. You've sent questions, and Embla, who works with us as a social media coordinator, who has access to all the content, is going to read them out to me, and I'll do my best to answer. These are questions that are important because they help also frame the way in which I certainly cover the projects that I visit. So thank you in advance for asking them. Over to you, Embla.
Wonderful. So the first question for you is, how will the reduction of foreign aid, most notably from the United States, refine the allocation of the resources available for humanitarian organizations? Including in this question is, what is the process for programs, organizations making their case to the UN to receive support? And how has the financial squeeze affected this? Following from this, do you think localized solutions could become standardized, and are they more cost effective?
Yes, so definitely there is an impact, and we're seeing it everywhere globally. It's a bit like in social science, what's called a natural experiment, where you take out one variable, which is the level of funding from one bilateral donor, here the United States, and you see whether that has the kind of importance we ascribe. And at this point, we can say, yes, it's quite important. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of concern. Organizations are not able to continue with the funding and the projects that they carried out before in the past. I think the question also probes the aspect of what alternatives. What about localized funding? And that's clearly a key. There are other donors that are stepping up, or at least are thinking about stepping up, because these things move very slowly. We're talking now of something that happened 2 months ago. At the same time, it's forcing everyone to rethink what they're doing. And I could think of two other sources. One is a sort of social enterprise model where the projects themselves increase the contributions they require from local stakeholders. And it's not necessarily the people working on the projects, it's also the people benefiting and a wider community, a wider local network. And of course, hopefully, Letter C, which is supposed to be a new source of funding for these projects. The second one, which is what the aid agencies have been very bad at, is understanding what other sources exist around them from the private sector. There's a growth of philanthropic donations. In some places, it's called corporate social responsibility, although many people would dispute that. And also of sort of self-interested investment. So, for example, school feeding, oil and gas industry projects are the wealthiest in Libya. They're incredibly powerful. They are interested in workforce, what they call workforce development, creating a pool of expertise and recruitment that they can use for their work. So they're interested in the standard of education. They're interested in retaining students. And that's why there probably is interest there in continuing the support, which probably many of the UN agencies will fail to continue in Libya, a sort of replacing the state, replacing the aid agencies with more sustainable funding from the private sector. So there are alternatives, and it's going to oblige many decision makers, particularly at the local level, to think about how they do things. And in that sense, it's not bad.
Wonderful. Thank you for your answer. So the next question is, what recommendations do you have to organizations to help them adapt in both the short and long term in the face of reduced external support?
The adaptation has to be through communication, through sharing what they're doing, how that could be known to other private funders. So the projects depended a lot on local contacts to reach out to what are called implementing partners, so the intermediary organizations. In the case of Tunisia, these are quite important in helping identify the community of women that carry out the projects. But they need to go beyond that and learn to communicate on social media, learn to explain the results they're achieving and who they are, and clarify in very simple terms. It's not a business plan or anything, what the project is.
What alternative funding mechanisms or partnerships can you envisage being developed to sustain humanitarian programs in areas that previously relied on American Western foreign aid?
Yes, the alternative funding on a large scale, there is very little alternative. There are what they call non-traditional donors, and here the Gulf states have become very active in some areas. The problem with that is that these are very different. They follow a very different logic, and so you can't just switch donors. There is still quite an effort by countries such as Norway, the European Union, that continue supporting these communities and projects. And the key will be how to continue supporting without the aid organizations absorbing a lot of these resources. That's going to be a challenge. It'll require more accountability, more verification, and that's where the system should evolve. It's not clear it will, but that's where it should go.
Wonderful. And for the last question, why is massive financial support not needed? Why would it not help?
Massive financial support is intuitively you'd think, yes, it's good, but it also comes with an increase in inefficiency, achieving smaller results with the same given level of resources. It's an invitation not to be careless, but for things to become more expensive than they need to be, for salaries to go up, and bigger, more expensive vehicles to be used. It requires a discipline that is not always present amongst the aid agencies. So grassroots projects, at least if the organization is the one getting the resources, its own resources through its own fundraising, there's more responsibility, more ownership. And here I would also invite the person who asked the question to think about social enterprise and how small NGOs can sell services and generate their own income, even obtain loans which they can reimburse. Things like bakeries, for example, small bakeries which create employment, which help, for example, attract young men who would otherwise be joining militia. This is one of the areas where aid agencies have been struggling to create more sustainability within the projects.